Hi, welcome to the Pole Shift News. It's Gene at the mavestar Observatory. Guys, a little bit of a change of tone with regards to what we're going to do in this video. We're going to look back at a little bit of history. But in essence, I think our work here is nearly halfway done. 7 years ago we set out to find out what were causing the problems that we were going to face around this time and more in particular in the future. And like I say, I think we're halfway there. We know that a lot of the problems of the changing climate are related to cosmic radiation and this magnetic pole shift that the Earth's going through at the moment is largely a result of that and causing those problems. The other thing that's causing the problems is, as you know, the grand solar minimum, the declining solar activity. But this has happened before in our history, and it's going to happen again in the future. But the problem is that we have rapidly over the last couple of thousand years developed technology, mainly in the last couple of 100 years, to help us do our farming, because before that we used to hunt and gather, and as we was hunter and gathering, we was always on the move. We was never stuck in one place, and this is what's led to a lot of civilizations failing in the past, is that when you settle down, you hope that that environment that you've settled down is going to provide all the creature comforts that you need, and mainly back then it was just food and water. When we stopped becoming hunters and gatherers and became farmers, it meant that there was more time to do other things, because otherwise we was just, when we was hunter-gatherers, just out there all the time, constantly hunting for food, bringing it back to the village. Your village would probably grow a little bit, so the demand to go out there more and more would be increasing all the time. But when we become farmers, all that meant we needed to do when the families increased in size was just farm a little bit more. So we would just use a bit more land to grow wheat or corn or things like that, or graze more, rear more animals and things like that. And that's how villages became small towns, and small towns became cities, is what we enjoy today. But the majority of the inhabitants on this earth today are settlers. We go to work only because we get the money that enables us to buy the food and keep those bills paid that keep the roof over our heads. That's the only reason. And we can increase technology by expanding different jobs into different areas. Some people build electronics, some people build TVs, cars and things like that. And of course it gives you a bit of encouragement, being in the capital system, to go and earn a little bit more or work a little bit harder. That was what we was all told and led to believe the capital system that we have today would deliver for us. But it's all going to change, and the reason for that is what we're going to explore a little bit later on in this video. So as always, guys, big thank you to the few people that have been supporting the observatory, and that work's going to continue. I said we was halfway finished with our job here. The only other thing to do for us here at this observatory is continue monitoring the magnetic pole migration, and also I think like we've set out to do, is just monitor the amounts of cosmic radiation and look how that impacts the climate further, because as a result of the cosmic radiation that has been inbound for the last 30 years, it has led to the climatic shifts that we've got today. It's quite clear that that is what's driving climate, and as a result of these extra cosmic radiations inbound, we know what the causes of that led to. So grand solar minimum, pole shift, has led to climatic change, not CO2 like all the governments are trying to claim. So yeah, big thanks to those people that are supporting the observatory. That's what we're going to be doing in the future, just looking at the regions around the world where the cosmic radiation is increasing or decreasing, and we'll follow the climatic changes along with it. But what is on the cards is possibly a return, if we don't do something now globally together. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, last thing we want is globalism. But if we don't work together, billions of people over the next 10 years are going to die, and there's no question about it. We are rapidly losing our arable land that we grow crops in globally, and if you're not paying attention to these news articles that concentrate on specific topics of agricultural output, then you're doing yourselves a misjustice. If you're waiting for a government to make the announcement that there's a big catastrophe looming in the next few months, then it's already too late. What you need to do is make some preparations, and not only just, it's not about just gathering things together, guys. It's about, getting your mental state right for what is about to come, because you may have to go back to becoming a hunter-gatherer, and you're not going to be one of these people that are going to be able to settle. Some people who live in cities now, in 8 years' time, if they haven't already done it before 8 years, they are going to have to shut the door on that property because it will no longer serve them. When it comes down to it, there are certain things that human beings need, and cities are not going to be able to provide those things for you. You're going to need to be probably on the move all the time, like a hunter-gatherer, if you want to ride out the storms that are coming. Technology is going to disappear, because after 10 years of nobody building electronics, building these cars, building all these infrastructures and all the other technology that relates around them, like, we were used to having these iPhones now. And it was funny, I said to my partner this morning, can you imagine how much life revolves around the smartphone these days? Our banking, our emails, it's everything has changed. But when people don't manufacture these devices for a small period of time, then the skills are lost, and as a result of that, we start going back to primitive technology. I want to ask the question, is there anyone on this who's one of our subscribers that can actually build a simple radio? Is there anyone that can build a simple computer? And the answer will be, out of the 26,000, there'll probably be one, maybe two people that can possibly do that. And if we ask them if they can not only build it, but can they program some simple electronics, they're not going to be able to do it. So the skill set that will be lost in a short period of time will put us back almost into the dark ages. And this is what we're facing globally, because the problems of climatic change on this world are affecting every part of the world, and nobody is going to go unless you're obviously part of an indigenous tribe in some rainforest that is still hunter-gathering or farming on a very, very small scale. Then you're going to ride throughout all this time with no problems, and not even knowing there's been any changes, unless you have thousands of people that have fled cities for months, and they've come into your district of where you're living in that rainforest, and they're going to start hunting in your territory, and that will eventually have a knock-on effect on the food chain that sustains even these indigenous tribes. This is clearly, guys, what we're all going to face. And if you just do a little bit of research, you'll find that everything I say in this video is spot on, 100% right. Huge cities have been abandoned in our history, not even 5,000 years ago, that housed over 2,000 residents. There's a couple of reasons for why this might have happened, according to these archaeologists and historians. Firstly, climatic change meant that the crops that they used to grow were no longer sustainable. They couldn't grow enough crops to feed these huge cities. And the other one is that the population grew too quick, and they couldn't keep up with the demands of producing that much food. And as a result of that, people that was getting less and less now, not enjoying so much city life, because at the beginning there would have been plentiful food, now had to have smaller and smaller rations, and it became better for them to leave the settlement and go hunter-gathering, because whilst you're on the move, you can change where the climates are changing, and you can stay there for a few years, or even longer, so long as that area can sustain what you need. So there's nothing new in our history with cities failing. Only problem is that the majority of life on this planet, like I said earlier, is in a settlement of some sorts. We are heavily dependent on food production to feed the whole of the world. And when you start to see governments putting sanctions on exports and no longer allowing grains to leave that country because your people of that country need those, then that's a time to start paying a lot more attention. when you start hearing of countries losing 10% of the crop yield on the year, then that's the time to really start paying attention, because we're not too far away now from things really getting hard. And how possibly society can fall as a result of this is if people's food, it's like commodities, guys, and you know this. When food becomes less and less, the prices of it go up and up and up. It's like gold, it's like everything, it's like labour these days. We're even classed as commodities ourselves. If there's too much labour in the market, then the prices of wages go down as a result. And what we're facing as a result of all this global crop losses is hikes in food prices, and we're about to start to see all this start to take place. And the thing is, if people no longer have any expendable cash out their salaries because they've got to buy food, then they start to think, is it worth doing this job what I'm doing now, or is there another route for me to take? Well, unfortunately for a lot of us, we've got to wait until really something dramatically happens, because the land is all owned by people these days. You can't just walk across the countryside and emigrate to another part of this world simply because we've got borders, passports and things like that. And therefore you are going to be trapped in a situation where you're not going to be able to do too much about it. So it's going to mean for a lot of people that aren't growing their own food to meet those needs, it means that they're going to go without things a lot more. And we're seeing this even in the UK today. We're seeing the elderly people that don't have a lot of money and they're not working, either buy food or they buy heating. And a lot of them just buy the food, because without the food they're going to starve to death. What they believe they can do is manage through a winter with very little heating, if any at all, because they can always put extra clothing on. And this is not the case for a lot of people. We're getting people in this western part of this world, in this modern day and age, freeze to death in their own homes because simply they couldn't afford to keep the heating on. This is what we're going to start seeing more of, guys. You can read all the articles. These articles of crop losses globally is happening, of governments closing the exports down of certain items, corn, wheat, rice, onions, you name it. And it's not localized to just one country. There's a global climatic problem taking place right now as a result of the jet streams breaking down, as a result of more cosmic radiation coming in and creating that cloud seeding effect that ladens those jet streams and starts making the polar jet streams mixed with the subtropical, both over the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere of this planet. And as a result, we're starting to see continuously now, year in, year out, a worsening of seasons, and as a result, crop losses from all over the world. And it's only a matter of time before things really get out of hand, guys, and that really is what we're going to be monitoring on our website from the not too distant future, especially when we get our cosmic radiation detectors up and running. And hopefully that won't be too far away. We got the majority of the program. We got the majority of the components we need. We're waiting for just a couple of little things, and it's not really worth me setting up my soldering station, just to do a couple today, do a couple tomorrow. I'm waiting for one or two more components to come, then we're going to have one big hit and it should be up and running, our first one. Then it's a matter of just reordering more of the same parts from the same suppliers and we're off with building more and more. Then it's a matter of putting these muon detectors out, and then of course it'll be a matter of just collecting the data, processing it, and begin then to answer the questions. I know for a few of you guys it's a little bit frustrating, but really we have only been building the muon detectors now for a couple of months and we've almost got the first one built. Once that first one's built, we can just replicate them all, and we can start putting them around the world like we have with the magnetometers. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we've got the TriMag up and running again. I've done a few checks yesterday afternoon, and everything looked all right after all the work that had been done. All the scaffolding's gone now, so we've reactivated the TriMag. We're going to leave it a couple of weeks and we'll take some data from there, process it, put it up on the website, and we'll have a little talk about the data that we've collected. We've also switched back on the magnetosphere sensor, so we're collecting data now on the magnetosphere once again, and we'll resume putting the data back on the website with regards to those. So guys, really all I wanted to do in this video is just point out a few things. Simple, right? It's not the first time that cities have collapsed, that have housed thousands of people, and the reason for those collapsing is the same as what we're facing right now. We know that there are certain signs taking place. The climate seasons are shifting, and in some parts of this world now we can't grow the crops like we used to. As a result of that, what's going to make matters worse, and I'll just briefly touch on this, is that farmers are no different to us these days. They never used to be. They used to be very shrewd people, but they're not anymore. They're just like us. They want holidays. They want the same sort of things that we want, like nice cars, but they also have to have, combine harvesters and agricultural equipment and barns and things like this. And farming this day and age isn't cheap at all. Combine harvester in this country can start at £1 million. And there isn't many farmers that can afford to have one of them for themselves, so what they usually do is hire a contractor with a combine to bring in the harvest. If you lose 10% of your crops or 20% of your crops, or you get no crops at all in 1 year, you can't pay your bills. You're going to start having things repossessed. And this is exactly what we are going to start seeing now. Farmers lose the land, lose their equipment, lose the ability to produce in the quantities that they did before, and as a result, it's like a bankruptcy. When you start to see that, you're no longer making massive profits or even reasonable profits, it's not long before you have to make a choice. You sell up. If you sell up, then all the skills are gone that you've probably, that farmer had for 20, 30 years. That's it. He knew his land better than anyone that will be on that land in the next 5 years. He knew how to get the crops out of it, and if he can't no longer get the crops out of it, what chance has somebody that don't know the land has got, or the history of that land? This is what we're going to start seeing. Farms go offline more and more, and as a result, prices are going to go increasing, and nobody is going to want to hand over a wheelbarrow full of cash for a loaf of bread. And at that point, you might well want to pick up your bug out bag, put it on your shoulder, slam that door shut on your house that you've got in the city, and walk away from it. Because it will not sustain you. It will not provide anything for you. What's the point in sitting in a house with a car on the drive with no fuel in it? What's the point in sitting in that house if there's no food to eat in that house? You've got to make a decision. And this is exactly what our ancestors have done, thousands of years ago. We have had great cities that were abundant at one point, thriving at one point, but we've seen it. Look at the Mayan cities, look at the Aztec cities, look at the Inca cities. They're no longer occupied. There's no cities that have grown from Inca cities that have stood today. These cultures had their moment, and sadly things didn't favour them sticking around to this day. And we have had our clear moment, guys. It's too late. We can't change the infrastructure of what we've got now, and if we don't get a plan together soon, millions, if not billions of people are going to start dying in the next 10 years as a result of what's happening. It's a serious, serious problem, and these governments of the world know exactly what we're faced with, and they will be keeping their eyes on the global food production, and if they want to control the people, they're going to have to control the food. And are we seeing that already? Are we seeing the measures taken by these world governments to control the food already? I think you'll agree with me that they are. So guys, I'll catch up with you in a few days time. The thing is, try not to worry about these things. I know for some people, in any case, they can't wait for this system to come down so that there can be a new beginning. And it's not the end. It really isn't. There are a lot of things that can come out of this, good for you and your loved ones. And but the last thing I would suggest you do is you just wait for something to fall into your hands. I think you have to make the steps and take the precautions to protect those loved ones now. And that could be a bit of stock, some provisions, some new skills, guys. That could be the big thing. New skills. Where can you get water from? How can you clean water? Have you got the facilities to do that? Have you got a few things that you might want to trade for other things? Have you got the ability to get your hands on those things that you need to trade? Those are the things that we need to start thinking about and really preparing ourselves mentally for, as well as putting up seeds, and the other things. Anyhow, guys, if you want to support what we do at the observatory with our muon detectors and magnetometers that we've got globally and will be going out globally, then there's a link down there. You can help us. And I'll tell you now, there's a lot worse things you can do than support a website like ours, which has a lot of data on a lot of anomalies. And at the end of the day, there's a lot worse things, like I say, that you can do than support an observatory. So it's up to you. It's not mandatory. Links are down there. I'll say what I usually do. Have a great week. Bye for now.